This is Commanding the 99, a channel all about Magic the Gathering, but more specifically, Commander. Today, we are going to dive head first into Magic's history, asking the question, is it possible to create an effective Commander deck just using old cards? Well, I tried, and even took it a step further, or a step back rather, and solely used cards printed prior to the release of Mirrodin. Quick side note, for those of you that aren't familiar, Mirrodin was released October 2nd, 2003, roughly 10 years after the first set was released. This was a shifting point in Magic's history. Mirrodin premiered the new updated border, introduced cards like Chrome Mox, Extraplanar Lens, Solemn Simulacrum, and everyone's favorite Commander equipment, Lightning Greaves. This was actually the debut of equipment. So the first step in creating a Commander is picking the Commander. I wanted at least 2 colors but no more than 3. The options were slim, and even at that, the legendary creatures were a bit underwhelming. After a quick trip through Magic's history, I found a few contenders. Now the grandfathers and grandmothers of Commander were an option. The format is actually named after them, but their upkeep was not something I was looking forward to. Luckily for me, there were a few more 3-colored creatures I found. There were 5 options: Rith the Awakener, Treva the Renewer, Croesus the Purger, Daragaz the Igniter, and Dromar the Banisher. All 5 of these creatures have color-specific effects, and there actually happens to be cards that can manipulate card color. Going into this build, I wanted to maximize the effect of the commanders I chose, so they were a must-have in the deck. Those cards are Shifting Sky, Blind Seer, Tidal Visionary, and Sway of Illusion. They just happen to be blue, so that meant I had to have blue in the deck, eliminating 2 of the options. So first up was Treva. Treva the Renewer is a 6/6 dragon with flying for 3, a green, a white, and a blue. Whenever Treva the Renewer deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 and a white. If you do, choose a color. You gain 1 life for each permanent of that color. Seems like a lot of work, but not much upside. So I moved on to Croesus. Croesus the Purger is also a 6/6 dragon with flying for 3, a blue, a black, and a red. Whenever Croesus the Purger deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 and a black. If you do, choose a color. That player reveals his or her hand and discards all cards of that color from it. So it's a bit better than Treva, but just having 1 player discard in a Commander game is a bit too slow for my taste. That left me with Dromar. Dromar the Banisher is also a 6/6 dragon with flying. Dromar costs 3, a white, a blue, and a black. When Dromar the Banisher deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 and a blue. If you do, choose a color and return all creatures of that color to their owner's hands. Compared to the other options, this was a big improvement. So after I decided to go with Dromar, I dove right in. I searched just about every set released prior to Mirrodin and found some pretty interesting cards. Cards I didn't even know existed. Now, not all of them made the cut, but it definitely expanded my knowledge of some older cards. Some of the gems I found and decided to add were Web of Inertia, Tariff, Lethal Vapors, and Tainted Ether. These were some pretty intense cards. I even added them to some of my other decks. Web of Inertia is a blue enchantment for 2 and a blue. It says at the beginning of each opponent's combat phase, that player may remove a card in his or her graveyard from the game. If that player doesn't, creatures he or she controls can't attack you. Not having access to Ghostly Prison and Propaganda is a bummer, but this is a decent runner-up. Now Tariff may just be one of my new favorite removal spells. It costs 1 and a white for a sorcery that reads, each player chooses a creature with the highest converted casting cost he or she controls, then pays mana equal to that cost or sacrifices the creature. Now black has some similar effects like Innocent Blood, but with Tariff, you get their most expensive creature. Yeah, they may be able to pay for it and save it, but what are the chances of that on your turn? The next one is Lethal Vapors. It's a black enchantment for 2 and 2 black that says whenever a creature comes into play, destroy it. Pay 0, destroy Lethal Vapors. You skip your next turn. Any player may play this ability. Creature removal never looks so good. Sure, your opponents can conspire against you and agree not to attack the player who has to skip their next turn, but man, they don't make cards like this anymore. Another card that's in a league of its own is Tainted Ether. It's a black enchantment for 2 and 2 black, and it says when a creature comes into play, its controller sacrifices a creature or land. So, during my search of color-specific cards, I found Starlight. It gives you 3 life for each black creature target opponent controls. Soul Rend destroys a white creature. Riptide taps all blue creatures. Absolute Law grants protection to all creatures from red. Perish destroys all green creatures. Absolute Grace grants protection to all creatures from black. Lawan Cephalid Empress, he says when he enters the battlefield, he returns all blue creatures your opponents control to their hands and prevents them from playing blue creatures. Wrath of Merit Lage taps all red creatures and prevents them from untapping. Hibernation bounces all green permanents to their owner's hands. Light of Day prevents all black creatures from attacking or blocking. Dread of Night gives all white creatures -1/-1. Flooded Woodlands, in order for a green creature to attack, its controller must sacrifice a land. Virtue's Ruin destroys all white creatures. Nature's Ruin destroys all green creatures. And finally, Jovial Evil. It deals 2 damage to target player for each white creature they control. Now, I also came across the set of Circle of Protections. Each one prevents damage from a source mentioned in its title, as well as the Paladins. Each one destroys a creature of a certain color. Turns out they were cards that specify all 5 colors, but I decided I didn't want to go that wide. I trimmed it down to 3. I chose the colors with the most cards that had a color effect, and that left me with black, green, and white. Now I realized that these cards alone couldn't hold up the deck, but it would be a good direction to start with. I still had a long way before I hit 99, so I returned to the original search and scoured Magic's past for cards that would supplement the idea I was running with. I found out Clone was printed and revised, so that was not a Magic ad. Well-Laid Plans was right on theme with the color-specific effect, and preventing damage is always a safe bet. Coral Net was a neat card I thought of a few ways I could take advantage of, and Pendril Flux reminded me of a single target tariff and a great way of getting rid of a big creature. I knew I had access to blue, so when my opponents had to replay the cards that Dromar bounced, I wanted to have counters waiting. I decided to go with the original Counterspell, Vodalian Mage, Arcane Denial, Daring Apprentice, and Desertion. So I had a rough draft and I was eager to see how it would fare in a Commander game. The first match was against Atarka, Estrid, and Breya. As eventful as that game was, I couldn't keep up. Atarka ramped and started playing big dragons. Estrid made a force field preventing damage, and Breya played Mycosynthelatus, throwing all of my color changing enchantments out the window. So off to round 2. I played against Sisay, Kadena, and Kaikar. The Sisay deck revolved around the shrines, and I severely lacked enchantment removal. Once it got 3 shrines out, it accelerated and quickly took charge of the table. Kadena was just drawing cards at will, it seemed, once it got Dream Chisel and Ugin out. And Kaikar was a Super Friends deck, and it made me realize something the longer I played against it. Planeswalkers created a huge change in the game, seeing how I was using cards printed before the creation of Planeswalkers. I had no answer. So after those 2 horrible losses, I realized something. The deck was going in too many directions. It became pieces of different puzzles trying to work together. I needed to narrow down the direction and focus on one main strategy. I had color changing tricks, discard, and a ton of bounce spells that really didn't get me too far. I had to condense it down. So I went back to the drawing board and made a few changes. I've yet to pull the deck out again, but against the decks that my playgroup has, I feel the outcome would probably be the same. So that brought me back to my original question. Is it possible to create an effective Commander deck just using old cards? Well, after I made the deck and this video, I still don't have a definite answer. What I do know is the cards and Magic product that come out as often as they do absolutely make a difference. So I'm going to leave you with this. Go back and find an old legend. Make a deck around them. Challenge yourself. Who knows? You can probably make a deck better than I did. It's all about having fun, and with the amount of cards out there, the possibilities are limitless. Leave a comment on who you would have picked, or even your deck list after you've made it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, this is Commanding the 99.